Hi, I'm Rev Chris. I'm thinking about water. Very powerful water. Tides are very powerful. There's an old story about an English king hundreds and hundreds of years ago, King Canute. And he was very powerful, and all the people around him told him how wonderful and strong he was. And he wasn't happy about this, so to teach them a lesson, he got them to carry him down to the beach on his throne. And then he sat there and commanded the waves to stop. Of course they didn't. They all washed over him and he ended up with very wet feet. And he taught the people around him a lesson. And I'm going to talk about another story in a minute, about how God used his power over water to save his people. I thought I'd start by seeing how much I can control water. Well, I've got a glass jar here and a jug of water. So I'm going to pour some water into the jar. And I've got a piece of card. And I'm going to put the card on top of the jar. I'm going to flip it over. Now I'm going to take my hand away. What do you think's happening? Well, you would have thought that the water would have pushed the flimsy bit of card away, but it stayed there and held it. How about if I take the card away? What do you think will happen then? Let's see. Well, I've taken the card away, and as you imagine, the water has all run out. Let me try something else. Same jar, same water. Put the water into the jar. Piece of card, and put the card over the top. And like before, flip it over. Take my hand away, and the card holds the water in. What's going to happen if I take the card away? Let's see. Drum roll if you like. So I take the card away, and amazingly the water has stayed where it is in the open jar until I command the water to come out. Let's see if I can do that. Water, come out. Oh, yes. Isn't that incredible? Well, I'm not as powerful as God. Nobody is. But let's hear a story now about God using his power over the waves to save his people. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about an incredible escape. And it looks as though my dog Pippa has come to help me with it. Well, Moses and Aaron went to see the king of Egypt, where God's people had been held by the king. And Moses and Aaron said to him, it's time to let God's people go. You need to set us free. And the king of Egypt, he just laughed. He said, why? Why should I set them free? They do everything I tell them to do. I'd be daft to let them go. Well, Moses said, you've been warned, and if you don't let them free, God will make some very bad things happen to your kingdom and your people. And the bad things started to happen almost immediately. The rivers of Egypt filled with blood. The houses of Egypt were covered with flies. The dust of Egypt turned into gnats. But the king still wouldn't let God's people go. The houses of Egypt swarmed with frogs that covered the people. The animals in Egypt grew very sick and they died, and the king still wouldn't let the people go. Hail pelted down, broke down the crops and hit people and hurt them. But God, despite this, still couldn't see any sign of the king letting them go. So he sent a plague of locusts, insects that gobbled up all the crops and covered everything. It was absolutely terrible. And then, when the locust had gone, night fell across the whole of Egypt for 3 long days. And still, the king said no. Well, God did some pretty terrible things. And at last, the king said, "Okay, go, take your people and never come back." Well, all the people cheered. They got all their stuff together and they packed it and they waved goodbye and off they went, travelling to freedom. But they came to a big sea that they had to cross, and they were puzzling out how they were possibly going to get across. And while they were puzzling, the king had changed his mind. He decided, no, I won't let them go. I'm going to bring them back and keep them here. So he got into his big king's chariot and his army followed him, and off they went. Meanwhile, back at the sea, the people arrived and saw it stretched out before them, and the Egyptian army was rushing in behind them. What could they do? They were in terrible fear. God whispered to Moses, "Raise your special walking stick," he whispered. And as Moses did so, the sea was split in two before them, leaving a path right through the sea to the other side. Well, the Hebrews saw this, and off they went and hurried through the path to reach the other side. The Egyptian army was closing behind them, and what happened then was the sea closed behind God's people, and it swallowed up and washed away the king's armies. God's people were free at last to live their lives as God wanted them to. Well, that's an exciting story, and it shows God's power and how he can save anybody he wants whenever he wants. And he can also deal with people who don't want to live the way he wants them to and are cruel and evil. So let's give thanks to God that we have a mighty God like that protects us and looks after us and our friends and our families. And I'm going to say a prayer now. And if you just close your eyes and we'll just think about how mighty God is, and how even though we're small and frail, we are safe in his hands, that he will always look after us. He will always lead us to the other side whenever we've got troubles or are worried. Now just be still for a moment and think of all the people you know who help you. Who'll help you when you're worried or in times of trouble, and lead you to the other side, to be in the light, and give thanks to God for them. Amen. Well, an exciting story, and there's lots more in the Bible, and there's lots more in that story about the big escape as well. So if you'd like to go and find your Bible and read it to get the whole picture, or read it with a friend or a grown-up, I'm sure you'll be even more excited than you were listening to that. Till the next time, bye-bye.